if the Three Jokers McFarlane figures have taught us anything, is that hurry up and make Willem Dafoe the Joker. Hey everyone, Dark Spider Davey here. So one of my last, and not my last, McFarlane toy figure review from 2021 was Red Hood. Well, to welcome in 2022 and a plethora of new McFarlanes to cover, let's go ahead and finish off that line, at least for the time being, with the remaining Jokers, or at least the initial remaining Jokers that are currently out in the current wave, and that is for the Criminal and the Clown from the Three Jokers line from McFarlane. Now, again, to reiterate, or rather recap, the Three Jokers storyline from the graphic novel is basically, what if the Joker was played by three different men? And these are specifically two men. There is one missing, and it looks like McFarlane does have plans to release a new version or a reissue of sorts from The Killing Joke, but we'll get to that eventually. For now, we have the Criminal and the Clown. So essentially, these are the personas that take on the more plan and thoughtful and very calculative part of the Joker, while at the same time also the playful and chaotic and just batshit crazy, no pun intended there, version of the Joker that's all for shits and giggles. And that's pretty much what we're dealing with here based on the way they look and the way that they present themselves. Now, let's also be honest with ourselves. There was no way I was going to do an individual video on both, since essentially they are the same figure, just kind of repainted with a different set of clothes and a different head sculpt. Other than that, they're pretty much the exact same figure, so I figured, you know what, let's go ahead and knock out two Jokers with one stone. Also, just a heads up guys, if you guys want to get your own Clown or Criminal figure, be sure to use the affiliate links in the description. It'll help out the channel a lot, and you guys can also own these figures and add them to your McFarlane toy collection. Here we have the Criminal and the Clown. You can see very blatantly and very in your face which one's which. You got the Clown over here with the much more bombastic and colorful outfit, while at the same time you have the Criminal over here with a uniformal suit, all one color, very clean and proper with a very straight face. And then we have the much more lunatic side of the Joker with a very gleeful smile on his mug right there. So you can see definitely that they struck a really good resemblance of how the characters look in the comic book, in the graphic novel, and also made sure that the colors popped and they looked very standoutish as far as how they look on the shelf, how they look like in figure form, because this is very reminiscent and very captivating of how they look in the graphic novel. So all the colors, all the lining, all the stuff going on with the suits, very pristine, very proper, very saturated, especially when we get to the Clown here. You can see the huge contrast in the green, the magenta, I guess you could say, of the coat itself, along with the striped purple pants. I honestly don't know what's going on over here with his crotch area. I don't know. You could, I guess again it plays into his persona, being that, you know, he's kind of crazy. Maybe he's a little too crazy in the sheets. But you can see right here that he got around and he still sports the iconic flower there on his lapel. That's probably has a hidden meaning or use behind it. Now, personally, I don't know how I feel about the coat itself. I do feel like the rubber is made of that kind of rubber that can definitely be warped and damaged in unsavory temperature conditions. So a word to the wise, or, you know, a word from the not so wise, based on how I treated that wrestler suit Spider-Man figure, definitely keep this guy in room temperature as best as possible, because these flaps right here on his coat, like I said, I don't know how I feel about them. They're made out of this matte kind of rubber, but it's a little bit too thin of a rubber that I feel like any kind of extreme weather conditions or temperature conditions could have a negative effect on it, so be careful. Whereas the Criminal Joker, the plastic or the rubber around his suit, which is made to be a little bit more tailor refined, you can see hugs onto the figure a little bit more closely, and because of that it's also a little bit thicker. There's very little room for it to have any kind of like wiggle that it's reinforced, so to speak, so you don't really have to worry about it as much. You still have to make sure you take care of your figure and don't risk it damaging due to things that you can't control, such as the temperature, but at the same time, I feel like out of the two, this is the one you really have to look out for. Whereas in regards to the Criminal's costume, you'll notice it's a bit more clean and proper. It's not as flashy, though he's still sporting a very noticeable color. Specifically to me, it's more of the GameCube color, as I like to call it, or if you want to be exact and technical, it's called indigo. But you can see right here, it looks awesome. It looks pretty straightforward. Nothing really stands out as far as nice little quirky details, but then again, it fits the criminal's persona because he's all about business. He doesn't really want to be showy. He doesn't want to be in your face and all that stuff. He wants to be calculative and methodist, if you will. So therefore, his suit pretty much fits that exact bill, and because of that, there's nothing really that stands out to me. And you could kind of make the argument that that's kind of a detriment to the Joker, but considering where they're going along with the storyline, it fits. As far as everything else, like I said, it's pretty much similar as far as molding of the legs, molding of the arms, specifically the arms, and even the hands. The hands are exactly the same, only with a different paint job. You can see that you have a little bit more glossiness going on the criminal's gloves, whereas the clown's, he's got more of a matte, doled out look to his gloves. But other than that, they're exactly the same sculpt. And for the most part, you see right here that they're pretty much repaints up until we get to the head. Obviously, to fit the persona behind the characters, you have different head sculpts going on right there. You got some shared detailings going on, specifically the hair, which is really well painted. It reminded me an awful lot of the McFarlane Toys Arkham Asylum figure that I covered before, where you have this detailing and sculpting going on with his hair that's very reminiscent of that. You even got the same kind of pattern going on over here where it's slightly cut off, but then it's combed back from the front with the widow's peak. But again, keen to the detail to fit the personalities. You can see that it's very, very subtle, but I feel like it's a bit more combed over on the criminal's head as opposed to the clown's. The clown's is just a little bit more sporadic. It's very tough to really illustrate it here on camera, but if you see it in person, you'll see exactly what I mean. Other than that, then you get to the not so subtle detail, which is of course the face. You still got great detailing and sculpting and paint applications going on both faces, but you can definitely see that the clown's is going to be the one with the iconic very grim looking smile. You even got a little bit of the orange and the nastiness going along with his teeth, whereas the criminal is going to have a much more straight face. Now, out of the two, I will give my first place prize over to the clown's, not only because he's got the iconic Joker smile, but they do something with the clown here that McFarlane needs to keep in mind going forward, because unfortunately they do something with the criminal that a lot of people already are criticizing McFarlane for doing in a number of figures, specifically the Batman figure that we got coming up, the Robert Pattinson Batman figure, where they made his eyes and painted them to look in a specific direction, or specifically to his right. Therefore, if you're going to pose them, you got to pose them with those eyes in mind. Otherwise, if you have them in a very standard neutral pose like I am right here, just for the sake of the review, it always looks like he's looking to his left at something specifically, like, oh, there's a box of donuts over there. I should probably take them. And for toy collectors such as ourselves, that's a huge nitpick. I mean, it just bugs our OCD because now we feel obligated to pose them in a specific way to have them fit his look, his actual gaze. Because most of the time, you expect figures to just have that standard forward-looking look, just like Clown has right over here. Unless you're a premium format company like Hot Toys that specializes in making the eyes actually movable, so that then you can pose the character in a variety of ways, don't do it. So McFarlane, I know it's a little too late to handle that in some figures that are coming up here, such as that Batwoman variant from Batman Beyond or the Batman from the 2022 Robert Pattinson movie, but with anything that you have right now in current prototype development, please do not do this thing with the eyes anymore. It's kind of annoying, and sadly, the criminal faces that despite having the much more straight looking face. Beyond that head sculpt and the costume differences, ideally, they're the exact same figure as far as sculpting and as far as posability. And because of that, I'm going to be cutting back and forth between the B-roll footage for the articulations because essentially they're the exact same figure, with just a couple of detriments to the criminal. But for the most part, they're exactly the same. You got the head sculpt that allows the movement of the head to rotate 360 degrees as well as pivot slightly up and down, and it's actually really free-flowing, so I'm actually pretty thankful for that. And then of course you do get joints in the arm that are very reminiscent of McFarlane's, where you get movement 360 degrees vertically, as well as being able to move inwards and outwards about that far. And then of course you do have the extra cut joint inside that allows flexibility of the shrugging movement, except it's not as prevalent here in the Joker as it is in past Batman figures that I have covered. And then of course a swivel bicep joint right there that allows the movement of the arm in place vertically 360 degrees, as well as two joints on the elbow that allow bendability about that far in. And since I said that the hands are molded the exact same way, so are the wrists. You got the ball joint in there that allows the mobility of the hands 360 degrees horizontally, as well as a slight vertical cut that allows the movement of the hand to be able to move up and down about that far out and about that far in. A little stiffer on the way that Criminal has it laid out here with his other much more closed off hand. It can definitely rotate 360 degrees, but I don't know what it is. I can't get it to move vertically slightly. You can see a little bit of movement going on right there, but it's not the best. And same could be said for Clown, to be honest. I feel like the mobility is best suited for the open hand as opposed to the closed off hand. I don't know if it's like a isolated thing, but I don't know what it is. I can barely get either of the two to move due to the way that the cuff right here of the coat is molded on both figures. Then we get to our first major difference that sadly does not work in Criminal's favor. As you can see, there's going to be a joint that's very apparent in one figure but completely absent in the other, and that is of course the torso joints, since Clown has a open coat here that allows mobility of the mid-torso, very free-flowing, as you can see right there. He could probably even rotate 360 degrees, but I do get a little bit of stress slightly, so I'm not going to push it too far, plus it just really looks weird. And you even got just slight movement on the bottom joint. It doesn't really move all that much, but you do get the feeling or the notion that he can move at the waist, but it is present there due to the way that his coat is open and free, like you see before you right there, just like his personality is meant to be. Whereas Criminal, since he's got the coat all buttoned up, just like his spirit, his soul, you're obviously not going to get any kind of movement in the torso. In fact, I think they actually made the torso piece all one piece. There's absolutely no joint whatsoever to be found. Like, it feels... I was thinking to myself upon playing with him, like, maybe there is a joint in there, you just can't move it obviously because of the coat. Maybe you can get a little bit of movement going, but no. Like, every time I move it, it feels like one entire piece. I don't feel any cuts or any motions going on right there in the middle, so don't even bother with it. It's not gonna happen. Then we get to the legs, where you would think that the way this crotch piece here on the Clown is molded, the legs would suffer from it, but frankly I don't think they do, because moving the leg forward about that far is no problem, as well as that far back before you start showing a little bit of the joint right there and breaking the illusion. And you can also of course flex it outwards about that far, and then full bendability at the knee, about a full 160 degrees or so. I was gonna say 180, but kind of closes off right there, so about 160 I would argue, with the two joints available there. Then we get to the ankles, where sadly, because of the way that the rims of the pants down here at the bottom are formed, that similar to, I think Arkham Asylum Joker had the same issue, where the shoes, or the feet rather, can pivot slightly up and down just ever so right there to just allow a little bit of flexibility, but no movement horizontally. Well, actually a little bit of movement, but because again the way that this whole rim of the pants is formed, you're not going to be able to move it all the way around. You can just move it ever so slightly, as you see before you right there, like that. And then of course you got the toesies, very pointed toesies, but they are able to move nonetheless. It's once we get to the Criminal again that those joints are present and they are there, but sadly my figure, and I don't know if anybody else has come across this issue as well, and if you have, feel free to let me know in the comment section below, but the right leg on Criminal can flex about that far outwards, a little bit of resistance due to the way that the coat is molded right here, and because of how stiff it is and in place it is, it's not going to allow full mobility as you would expect, like the Clown did, but full movement about that far back, and then that much out before you start feeling resistance from the jacket here. Once we get to the left leg, however, is where I came across my own personal isolated issue, where the molding of the joint inside here that's supposed to grip onto 2 pegs was made slightly too loose, that when I move the leg forward about this far, there goes the leg. And no, it's not really broken because you can see that the 2 pegs are still in place right there. They're not broken at all. And then going on to the leg piece, you see that everything is still intact. It's just that the way this grip right here with the 2 holes that are supposed to fit into those 2 pegs right there, they were molded just ever so slightly open. And because of that, it makes it very, very prone to just popping the leg off due to any kind of movement. So if you do have this figure, let me know if this is also an issue you're dealing with, or if this is just a personal isolated issue that I was just dealt with, had to picking out the wrong version of the character back in my target. So, but at the same time, it's not a huge deal to me personally because this is meant to be the more stoic and firm and stern Joker personality. So because of that, I feel like there's really no need to have him posing any other sort of way except just straightforward and completely in place like this. Then the clown over here, who's more deserving of the 22 points of articulation that McFarlane has granted them. Now, they both came with accessories, once again, very much lined up with their personalities. Clown over here got 2 specifically. One is, much like him, a very weird looking toy fish, or maybe it's a real fish. Regardless though, it's brandishing his iconic and maniacal smiling face right there. Kind of reminds me an awful lot of the Laughing Fish episode from Batman the Animated Series, and maybe that's what they were trying to kind of put attention towards or pay homage to. It is a little too loose here around the tail area that it kind of has me a little bit nervous that it could potentially break in the future, but it does fit in his open hand very comfortably. You just got to make sure you place it in the right form because he could fall off very easily. He doesn't really clip in there or fit in there snugly. You just got to make sure you toy around with him to make sure that he's holding it properly. And he came with his own crowbar. Now, being that we just covered Red Hood, this feels ever so slightly redundant. However, one thing to note is that you'll notice his crowbar is just a little bit on the thicker side. It's got a little bit more girth, a little bit more oomph. So you can say that his is going to perform better than Red Hood's. But it's interesting to see that Red Hood is, notorious for using his own crowbar because of how it's tied to his origin story. So Clown over here is going to turn the tables and have his own crowbar that's going to probably pack an even harsher punch. And thankfully, unlike other McFarlanes that I've covered in the past, this crowbar can fit into his hand rather firmly without ever feeling like it's going to break the hand. It is a little tight and a little bit of a strain to put in there, but eventually it does fit in there. So if you want to kind of pose him like this by having him hold the crowbar, it actually rather works. So putting the fish back onto his hand right there, you can see both accessories can actually be used on the figure and actually add character, even more character than you could probably put more into the clown right here. And the accessories do a fascinating job at doing that. Now, that's not to say that the same can't be said for Criminal, because even though he's meant to be the more stern and stoic version of the character that's like no fun and all gloom and all that based on his face here, he does have his own cane right here that came with him. And the cane itself is okay. Mine came just a tiny bit warped. You can see a little bit of a bend right there in the middle right there. But I like the paint application to give it a matted look here for the most part. I like how much thicker it is that you would expect from a cane. So it's got an additional amount of heft. But then, of course, my favorite part of the overall cane is this top piece right here, which is coated in this golden paint. But on top of that, it's even got a little bit of brandish detail, all topped off with a nice little engraved J at the top of the cane right there. So that's a very fine attention to detail. And sadly, due to this hand right here and the sizing, or the circumference rather, of the cane, it doesn't really fit into that hand. However, per the stock pictures that I've seen for this figure, he's meant to not necessarily hold the cane, but rather hold it in place with the open hand. And I'm actually kind of surprised by how well they got the height of the cane just right, that if you place it in the right manner, he'll actually hold it just right in place. So that's pretty awesome. And there you go. Now the criminal is not so much just boring and plain and stoic, but he definitely holds a form of power over the other Joker personalities. One that not only those other personalities, but probably the Bat family underestimated themselves. And due to that, I feel like now owning these figures and having them in my collection, they're definitely completist figures. I feel like if you're a huge fan of Batman, but not so much the Joker or the Rogues Gallery, you'll do just fine without them. But if you get one, you kind of sort of have to get the other. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like a collector can't just look at the clown and be like, I just want the clown, or I just want the criminal, or hell, I want the comedian when that figure comes out. No, you're gonna need all two or potentially three. So because of that, they definitely fit right at home, especially if you do have the Red Hood as well. But they definitely feel like an ensemble. So if you're going to be getting any of the three Jokers figures, I feel like they need to be complementing each other. So if you get one Joker, you need the other Joker as well as the Red Hood. Or if you get Batman, you might also need Batgirl. If you get Batgirl, you need Batman as well as Red Hood to kind of fit those slots and, you know, kind of complete the set for the most part, because they really do feel two halves of a whole here. And though we're not getting three Jokers initially, two Jokers is plenty enough that we can handle. But if you feel that you can handle another McFarlane toy review, check out the other one that's showing up on screen right now. And as always, guys, stay humble. I'll see you on the next one.